7 Secrets to Accept Everything as It Is, Buddhist Path to Freedom. Acceptance is one of the most misunderstood yet transformative principles in Buddhist philosophy. To accept everything as it is does not mean passively giving up, becoming indifferent, or allowing chaos to rule your life. It means seeing things clearly without distortion, recognizing what is within your control and what is not, and aligning yourself with the natural flow of existence. It means to live with the kind of serenity that no longer depends on external conditions, because peace has become your nature, not your pursuit. The Buddha often reminded his followers that suffering arises not from what happens to us, but from our resistance to what happens. When we insist that life should be different, that people should behave a certain way, that outcomes should conform to our desires, we plant the seeds of restlessness and discontent. But when we soften our grip on expectations, when we open ourselves to the present as it truly is, we begin to experience freedom, the liberation that comes not from changing the world, but from changing the way we see it. Acceptance is not resignation. It is a deep act of wisdom. It is the clarity that comes when you stop fighting reality. It allows compassion to arise for yourself and others because you finally understand everyone and everything is unfolding according to causes and conditions. When this understanding takes root, a calm joy fills your being. You start to walk through life lightly, even when storms surround you. This teaching is the heart of the Buddhist path. A path that invites us to awaken, to see beyond illusions, and to live in harmony with what is. In this journey, we will explore 7 profound secrets that reveal how to accept everything as it is, not as we wish it to be. Each secret is not a rule, but a realization, something to be felt, practiced, and embodied until it becomes the natural rhythm of your soul. Let us begin this journey toward acceptance, peace, and the quiet freedom that comes when you no longer resist life, but flow with it. The freedom that comes from seeing clearly. To accept everything as it is, one must first learn to see clearly. Most of the time, we are not perceiving reality as it is. We are perceiving it through the veil of our judgments, fears, and attachments. Our minds project meaning onto events, turning neutral occurrences into sources of pain or joy. The first secret of acceptance is realizing that much of our suffering is self-created, born not from reality itself, but from our distorted relationship with it. When you wake up in the morning and step into your day, notice how quickly the mind labels things: good, bad, beautiful, ugly, success, failure. This constant mental chatter creates a world of duality, a world where peace is impossible because you are always dividing, evaluating, and resisting. The Buddha called this the root of ignorance, to see the world not as it is, but as we imagine it to be. Clear seeing begins with awareness. Awareness is the gentle, non-judgmental observation of your inner and outer worlds. It is the stillness that notices the storm without becoming it. When you are aware, you begin to catch yourself in the act of resisting reality. You start to see that your suffering begins the moment you say, "This should not be happening." With awareness, you can pause before reacting. You can breathe. You can observe your own mind without being enslaved by it. The path to clear seeing is not found in control. It is found in surrender. You do not need to fix everything. You only need to understand it. When you stop trying to change what is unchangeable, clarity emerges. And from clarity, acceptance blossoms. Think of the ocean. When the surface is disturbed by waves, you cannot see the depths. But when the water is still, the bottom becomes visible. Similarly, when the mind is agitated by desires and aversions, truth is obscured. When the mind is calm, reality shines through. Acceptance, therefore, is not something you do. It is something that naturally arises when your mind becomes still and clear. Clear seeing also reveals the impermanence of all things. Everything you experience, pleasure, pain, love, loss, is transient. When you realize that nothing stays the same, you stop clinging to moments or pushing them away. You let life flow through you, and in that flow, suffering dissolves. The Buddha's insight into impermanence, anicca, is a doorway to acceptance. When you see that every moment is already vanishing, you no longer try to possess it. To cultivate clear seeing, practice mindfulness in daily life. When eating, just eat. When walking, just walk. When listening, truly listen. In these moments of complete presence, judgment fades and acceptance dawns. You realize that life does not need to be perfect to be beautiful. It only needs to be seen without distortion. Another aspect of clear seeing is understanding cause and effect, karma. Everything that happens is the result of countless causes and conditions. There is no isolated event, no random misfortune. Everything is interconnected. When you understand this, anger and blame lose their power. You begin to replace resentment with compassion because you see that people act according to their understanding, just as you do. When someone harms you, you no longer react with hatred. You recognize that their action arises from ignorance or pain. This realization does not make you weak, it makes you free. Clarity also transforms your relationship with yourself. Many people live in self-rejection, constantly judging their thoughts, emotions, or past mistakes. But when you see clearly, you realize that your mind is not an enemy. It is a natural process. Thoughts arise and fade like clouds in the sky. Emotions come and go like waves. You don't have to identify with them. You can watch them, learn from them, and let them pass. Acceptance begins when you stop demanding that your inner world be different. The practice of meditation deepens this clear seeing. When you sit in silence, observing your breath or sensations, you begin to witness the impermanence of all mental phenomena. You see thoughts arise from nowhere and dissolve into nothing. You see emotions peak and fade. Slowly, you understand that there is no need to control or suppress them. The mind, when left alone, naturally returns to stillness, just as a pond, when undisturbed, reflects the sky perfectly. Acceptance is not about liking what happens. It's about understanding it deeply enough that you no longer need to resist it. Clarity replaces confusion. Peace replaces struggle. When you live from this state of awareness, you are no longer a prisoner of circumstances. You are free because you see. And that is the first secret of accepting everything as it is. To see clearly, to awaken from the dream of your projections and dwell in the truth of the moment. When you see things as they truly are, not as your fears or desires paint them, you discover that reality itself is not against you. It is neutral, alive, and profoundly beautiful in its impermanence. To live in this way is to walk the Buddhist path of freedom, one clear breath at a time. If this wisdom resonates with you, take a moment to subscribe to the channel and continue this journey toward inner peace and awakening. Letting go of control. There is a profound truth hidden in the experience of every human being. Much of our suffering comes from the desire to control. We wish to control people, outcomes, the flow of time, even our own emotions. We create elaborate plans and expectations, believing that life will reward us if we manage to keep everything under our command. Yet the more tightly we grip, the more fragile we become. The harder we try to control the uncontrollable, the more restless and anxious our hearts grow. The second secret to accepting everything as it is lies in releasing that control, in surrendering to the rhythm of life and trusting that what unfolds has its own intelligence beyond the limits of our understanding. To let go of control does not mean to live without intention or direction. It means to act wisely, to do your part, and then to release attachment to the results. The Buddha's teaching on right effort expresses this beautifully. He encouraged his followers to act with clarity and compassion, but without craving or aversion. To let go of control is to understand that the universe operates according to causes and conditions, and that our power lies only in our present actions, not in the outcomes they produce. You cannot make a seed grow faster by pulling its leaves. All you can do is water it, protect it, and allow nature to take its course. The mind that seeks control is a mind that fears uncertainty. It believes that security can be found in prediction, that peace will arrive when everything goes according to plan. But life, by its nature, is unpredictable. Seasons shift, relationships change, bodies age, circumstances evolve. When we fight these movements, we create resistance, and resistance breeds pain. Freedom is found not in mastering the external world, but in mastering the art of inner surrender. Acceptance is the courage to live without guarantees, to find serenity in the midst of the unknown. When we begin to loosen our grip on control, we start to see the perfection of imperfection. A sudden storm may ruin our plans, but perhaps it nourishes a garden that was drying out. A lost opportunity may feel like failure, but perhaps it redirects us toward a deeper calling. From the limited view of the human mind, we cannot always perceive the full pattern of existence. Our understanding is partial, like seeing only one piece of an infinite tapestry. Letting go of control is an act of humility. It is the recognition that we are not the center of the universe, but participants in a vast unfolding beyond our comprehension. Buddhist wisdom invites us to see how attachment and control feed each other. We attach to possessions, status, and relationships because we believe they give us power over our environment. We try to control the people we love because we fear losing them. Yet this very act of control creates the tension that pushes them away. The more we cling, the more we suffer. True love, like true peace, can only exist in freedom. To love someone is to allow them to be who they are, not who we want them to be. To love life is to allow it to unfold as it must, not as we wish it to. Imagine a river flowing through a valley. You can fight against its current, exhausting yourself in resistance, or you can surrender to its flow and be carried by its strength. The current does not need your permission to move. It moves because it must. The same is true of life. The more you resist, the more you suffer. The more you surrender, the more you discover that the current itself is taking you exactly where you need to be. Letting go of control is not weakness, it is trust in the wisdom of the flow. When the Buddha spoke about dukkha, or suffering, he pointed out that much of it arises from grasping. We grasp at permanence in an impermanent world. We grasp at certainty in a universe of change. This grasping is a subtle form of control, a refusal to let life be as it is. To transcend this, we must cultivate what is called upekkha, equanimity. Equanimity is the calm acceptance of whatever arises, knowing that both pleasure and pain are transient visitors. It is the strength of a mountain that remains unmoved by the wind. To live in equanimity is to no longer need to control because you have found peace within yourself. One of the great paradoxes of letting go is that it brings you closer to true mastery. When you stop trying to control life, you begin to move in harmony with it. Your actions become more fluid, your intuition sharper, your energy less wasted. You begin to experience what the Taoists call Wu Wei, effortless action. It is not inactivity, but action without struggle, work without tension, doing without ego. When you act from this place, you are guided by something greater than thought. You become an instrument of life itself. To truly let go, one must also confront fear, the fear of loss, the fear of failure, the fear of being vulnerable. These fears drive the need to control. We imagine that if we can manage every detail, we will avoid pain. But pain is part of growth, and avoiding it only deepens our suffering. Letting go of control means allowing life to touch you fully, even when it hurts. It means trusting that you are strong enough to face whatever comes, because you no longer measure strength by dominance, but by openness. The lotus grows, not in the absence of mud, but because of it. So too does the human spirit awaken in the presence of uncertainty and change. In meditation practice, this principle becomes evident. Many beginners try to control their breath, their posture, or even their thoughts, believing that meditation means forcing the mind into silence. But true meditation is surrender. It is allowing the breath to breathe itself, allowing thoughts to rise and fall without interference. It is the art of letting be. When you stop trying to control your experience, the mind naturally settles into peace. Silence does not come through effort. It comes through release. Outside of meditation, the same principle applies. When you try to control every aspect of life, you close yourself off from the mystery of the present moment. You live in constant anxiety, measuring and predicting, never resting. But when you let go, when you accept that you cannot foresee or manage everything, you open the door to spontaneity and wonder. You begin to see beauty in imperfection, rhythm in chaos, and meaning in what once seemed random. Life becomes lighter, not because it changed, but because you did. Letting go of control also requires forgiveness, both of yourself and others. Control often arises from resentment. We cling to the past, replaying mistakes and injustices, believing that if we hold on tightly enough, we can rewrite what has already happened. But the past is beyond control. Forgiveness is the act of releasing that grip. It is not saying that what happened was right. It is saying that you refuse to let it rule you any longer. The moment you forgive, you step out of the prison of control and into the open sky of freedom. One of the deepest forms of control is the need to define oneself. We construct identities, roles, and stories, believing that if we can fix who we are, we will finally feel secure. Yet this self-image becomes a cage. We resist change because it threatens our identity. Letting go means releasing even this control, the control over who you think you are. The Buddha taught anatta, the doctrine of non-self. It means that what you call I is not fixed, but fluid. The body changes, the mind changes, emotions and thoughts come and go. The self is a process, not an object. When you let go of the illusion of a permanent self, you also let go of the need to defend, prove, or control it. You become vast like the sky, allowing all experiences to pass through without attachment. In the modern world, where everything encourages control over success, appearance, productivity, this teaching feels almost revolutionary. Society rewards those who seem to have everything under command. Yet even those at the peak of power confess a quiet emptiness. They discover that control cannot buy peace. Peace begins the moment you stop needing to dominate and start allowing yourself to simply be. When you give up the illusion of control, you rediscover the grace of simplicity. You return to what is natural, spontaneous, real. It is important to remember that letting go of control does not mean apathy. It does not mean abandoning your responsibilities or refusing to care. In fact, it is the opposite. When you let go of control, your actions become purer, more compassionate, because they are no longer driven by fear. You begin to act out of love rather than need, out of wisdom rather than compulsion. You still plant seeds, but you trust the soil. You still speak truth, but you release the need for others to agree. You still work toward goals, but you remain peaceful whether or not they are achieved. This is the balance between effort and surrender, between doing and being, that lies at the heart of the Buddhist path. Letting go also invites you to live in alignment with impermanence. When you accept that everything changes, you stop fighting time. You stop clinging to what is already fading. You start to appreciate each moment for what it is, not for how long it lasts. The sunset becomes more beautiful because you know it will end. The touch of a friend becomes sacred because it cannot be repeated. Every breath, every sound, every glance becomes precious because it is unique. This awareness transforms your relationship with the world. You stop asking life to last forever, and instead you start to live it deeply, completely now. There is a story from the Buddhist tradition about a monk who asked his teacher how to find peace. The teacher said, "Let go." The monk asked again, "But what if I let go of everything?" The teacher smiled and said, "Then you will find everything." To let go of control is to rediscover unity with all that exists. When you no longer stand apart, trying to manage life, you become one with it. You begin to experience the harmony that was always there, hidden beneath your resistance. You no longer need to push the river because you are the river. Sometimes life will test this surrender. Plans will collapse. People will leave. Illness may come. In those moments, the mind will want to grasp again, to control, to fight. But if you can pause and remember that everything is unfolding according to causes and conditions, you can rest in the middle of uncertainty. You can breathe and allow. You can say, "This too is part of the path." Acceptance is not found in a life free from storms, but in the ability to remain calm while they pass. The more you let go, the more resilient you become, because nothing can take away your peace when it no longer depends on control. When you finally release the need to control, something extraordinary happens. Trust arises. Trust in life. Trust in yourself. Trust in the unseen intelligence that weaves all things together. This trust is not blind faith. It is an intimate knowing that life, even in its difficulties, is not your enemy. It is a teacher. Every disappointment, every delay, every unexpected turn contains wisdom if you are willing to listen. When you let go of control, you stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What is this trying to teach me?" The entire meaning of life shifts from resistance to curiosity, from fear to openness. And perhaps this is the greatest freedom of all, to live without needing to know what comes next, to walk forward with faith that whatever happens will bring you closer to truth. To accept everything as it is, you must first accept that you are not the one orchestrating every detail of existence. You are a participant in the dance, not its choreographer. When you embrace this, the weight of life lifts from your shoulders. You realize you were never meant to carry the universe. You were only meant to be present in it. Letting go of control is a daily practice. It happens in small moments. The moment you release a grudge, the moment you stop replaying a conversation, the moment you breathe deeply instead of arguing with reality. Each act of surrender is an act of awakening. Each time you release control, you make space for peace to enter. And slowly, you begin to notice that life unfolds with far greater intelligence than your plans ever could. Doors open where you once saw walls. Blessings arrive disguised as endings, and what once terrified you becomes your greatest teacher. In the end, letting go of control is not about losing power, it is about reclaiming it, because true power is not the ability to bend life to your will, it is the ability to remain at peace no matter what life brings. When you master this, nothing can shake you. You become unmovable, not because you resist, but because you flow. You stand firm, not because you fight, but because you trust. This is the silent strength of acceptance. To live this truth is to embody the second secret of the Buddhist path to freedom. It is to walk through the world with open hands, no longer grasping, no longer demanding, but receiving each moment as a gift. When you let go of control, you discover that life was never against you. It was always trying to teach you how to be free. If this message touched your heart, remember to subscribe to the channel and continue this journey toward awakening and peace. The art of non-resistance. The third secret to accepting everything as it is rests in understanding and practicing the art of non-resistance. This teaching lies at the core of Buddhist wisdom, for it addresses the subtle root of human suffering, the endless battle against reality. Every time we resist what is, every time we say no to the unfolding of life, we separate ourselves from peace. The mind wages war against what already exists, and in that struggle it loses the capacity to be still. The art of non-resistance is not about weakness, nor is it about passivity. It is about harmony with the flow of life. It is a conscious alignment with the way things are, a surrender that does not mean defeat, but awakening. To understand non-resistance, one must begin with awareness of how resistance manifests. It is often subtle, hidden in our thoughts and emotions. It appears when we complain about a situation, when we silently wish the moment were different, when we hold anger toward the past or anxiety toward the future. It appears every time we think, this should not be happening. In these moments we are arguing with reality. But reality is unmoved. The rain will fall whether you approve of it or not. Time will pass whether you cling to it or not. The wise recognize this futility and choose to flow instead of fight. The Buddha compared the human mind to a flame flickering in the wind. It trembles because it is disturbed by desires and aversions, by its constant resistance to what is. When we learn non-resistance, the flame steadies. We stop exhausting ourselves trying to change what cannot be changed. We begin to see that peace is not found in controlling life, but in cooperating with it. The river does not resist its course. It moves effortlessly around stones and through valleys, eventually reaching the sea. So too can the human spirit flow in harmony when it ceases to resist. Non-resistance does not mean indifference. It does not mean that we stop caring or acting. It means that our actions come from understanding, not from struggle. When you accept what is, you act more effectively because your mind is no longer clouded by emotional turmoil. You can see clearly what needs to be done, and you can do it without attachment to the outcome. Resistance wastes energy. Acceptance conserves it. A person in non-resistance may appear calm on the surface, but inside they possess a strength that comes from alignment with truth. They do not fight against the wind, they adjust their sail. One of the deepest realizations of Buddhism is that suffering is not inherent in the world. It is born from our resistance to the world. Pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. Pain is what happens. Suffering is the story we tell about it. When you experience loss, the pain is real. But if you continue to resist it, if you replay the past, wish it were different, or cling to what is gone, you turn pain into endless suffering. Non-resistance allows pain to pass through you like a wave, without leaving a trace of bitterness. It transforms even sorrow into wisdom. The Buddha himself faced immense suffering, illness, aging, loss of loved ones, betrayal. Yet his heart remained peaceful. He taught that to resist suffering is to multiply it. If a person is struck by an arrow, that is pain. But if they resist it with anger, fear, and self-pity, it is as though they are struck by a second arrow. The arrow of mental suffering. The practice of non-resistance removes the second arrow. You may not be able to avoid life's challenges, but you can meet them without adding layers of mental struggle. This is true freedom. To live in non-resistance, you must develop the capacity to stay present. Resistance thrives in the mind that is lost in time, regretting the past or fearing the future. The present moment, however, is neutral. It simply is. The sound of rain, the beating of your heart, the silence between breaths, none of these are problems until the mind labels them as such. When you bring your full attention to what is happening now, resistance dissolves. Awareness does not fight, it observes. In observation, the energy of resistance transforms into peace. Many people misunderstand acceptance as giving up. They fear that if they stop resisting, they will lose motivation or become passive. But the opposite is true. Non-resistance is the foundation of intelligent action. When you stop wasting energy fighting reality, you have more clarity to respond wisely. The person who resists spends their energy on anger and denial. The person who accepts uses that energy to create change where it truly matters. Acceptance is not the end of growth, it is its beginning. You cannot move forward until you accept where you are. Non-resistance also heals relationships. Much of our conflict with others comes from our refusal to let them be who they are. We resist their behavior, their words, their choices. We try to change them according to our preferences. But every act of resistance creates distance. The more we push, the more others defend. True harmony arises when you let people be as they are, even when you disagree. This does not mean you condone harmful behavior. It means you choose to respond from peace, not from reactivity. You set boundaries without hatred, speak truth without aggression, and act with compassion even when others cannot. This is the power of non-resistance in human relationships. It transforms conflict into understanding. When you practice non-resistance toward yourself, something miraculous happens. Guilt and self-condemnation lose their grip. So many people live in internal war, resisting their own emotions, memories, and imperfections. They say, "I should not feel this way. I should not have done that. I should be better." This constant resistance creates inner division, but when you allow yourself to feel what you feel, without judgment, without denial, you begin to heal. The emotion passes, clarity returns, and self-compassion arises naturally. You realize that you were never broken, you were only fighting yourself. Meditation is the purest form of non-resistance. When you sit in silence, you learn to let everything come and go, sounds, sensations, thoughts, emotions, without grasping or rejecting. You begin to see that the mind's nature is movement, and peace is found not in stopping the movement, but in ceasing to fight it. The breath flows in and out, thoughts arise and fade. Everything is transient. When you stop interfering, a profound stillness appears beneath the flow, the stillness of awareness itself. This awareness is your true self, untouched by change. Non-resistance brings you home to that awareness. In the Mahayana tradition, there is a saying, "Form is emptiness, emptiness is form." This points to the understanding that everything is fluid, interdependent, and without a fixed essence. When you resist, you are trying to hold on to form, to freeze life in a particular state. But life is not meant to be frozen. It is a dance of arising and passing away. Non-resistance means joining that dance instead of trying to stop it. When you do, you discover a paradoxical truth. The moment you stop resisting change, you find something changeless, the calm awareness that witnesses all things. Non-resistance also requires courage. It takes courage to remain open in the face of pain, to trust when life feels uncertain. The ego thrives on control and resistance. It believes that without struggle, it will lose itself. But the opposite is true. The ego is like a clenched fist. Non-resistance is the opening of the hand. When you open, you discover that what you feared losing was never truly yours to begin with. You cannot lose what you are. You can only lose illusions. The practice of non-resistance extends beyond the personal level. It is a way of being in the world. When you look at history, you see that those who embodied non-resistance, like the Buddha, Lao Tzu, Jesus, and Gandhi, possessed immense power. Their peace was not passive, it was transformative. They did not fight the world with aggression, they changed it through the strength of compassion. Non-resistance is not withdrawal, it is mastery. It is the power that arises when you no longer let circumstances dictate your inner state. In daily life, you can practice non-resistance in small ways. When traffic is slow, instead of reacting with frustration, breathe and accept that this is how things are. When someone criticizes you, instead of defending or retaliating, listen quietly. Ask yourself if there is truth in their words. If there is, learn from it. If not, let it go. When plans change unexpectedly, notice the impulse to complain and instead say, "Ah, this too is part of the path." Each of these moments is an opportunity to step out of resistance and into awareness. Each one strengthens your inner freedom. Non-resistance also teaches us how to deal with loss. When someone we love dies, the pain can feel unbearable. The natural reaction is resistance, to deny, to rage, to plead for what cannot return. But when you soften into grief, when you allow it to flow through you without holding it back, you discover something sacred within the sorrow: love itself. Non-resistance reveals that love does not die. It changes form. What you once experienced through the presence of another, you now experience through memory, gratitude, and the quiet continuity of the heart. To resist loss is to deny love. To accept it is to honor it. The energy of resistance is contraction. The energy of acceptance is expansion. When you resist, your body tightens, your breath shortens, your world shrinks. When you accept, your body relaxes, your breath deepens, your world opens. This shift can be felt physically. Next time you face discomfort, notice your body. Are you tensing your shoulders, clenching your jaw, holding your breath? These are signs of resistance. Soften them consciously. In that softening, you align body and mind with the flow of life. You become a vessel through which peace can move. The art of non-resistance also invites us to see that challenges and obstacles are not punishments, but teachers. Every difficulty in life offers a chance to practice letting go. When you meet a situation that feels unbearable, ask yourself, what is this teaching me about resistance? Often the most painful experiences are those that shatter our illusions of control and permanence. They strip away what is false and reveal what is true. When you no longer resist, even suffering becomes sacred, because it awakens wisdom and compassion. In Zen teachings, there is a story of a monk who was caught in a terrible storm while traveling. The wind was fierce, the rain relentless. He could barely see ahead, yet he kept walking. Later, when asked how he endured such hardship, he said, "I did not endure it, I became it." That is the essence of non-resistance, to become one with what is, instead of standing against it. When you become one with the storm, you are no longer its victim. You are part of its movement and therefore free. The mind will continue to test you. It will tell you that you must resist to survive, that surrender is weakness. But if you look deeply, you will see that resistance has never brought you peace. It has only prolonged your suffering. The art of non-resistance is not learned in theory, but in direct experience. Each time you face discomfort and choose to soften instead of harden, you awaken. Each time you allow rather than control, you take a step toward liberation. Slowly, resistance loses its power, and what remains is an effortless stillness, the stillness that was always within you. When you fully embrace non-resistance, you discover a profound serenity that does not depend on circumstances. You may still feel pain, but it does not define you. You may still experience change, but it does not frighten you. You begin to see that all things, joy and sorrow, gain and loss, birth and death, are waves in the same ocean. The ocean does not resist its waves, it contains them all. When you realize that you are that ocean, vast and boundless, nothing can disturb your peace. This is the third secret to accepting everything as it is, to stop fighting reality, to dissolve the boundaries between what I want and what is. When you no longer resist, life reveals its natural harmony. The world does not need to change for you to be free. You need only to stop arguing with it, and when you do, freedom arises effortlessly, like the dawn following the longest night. If these teachings speak to your heart, remember to subscribe to the channel and continue this path of awareness, peace, and liberation. Finding peace in impermanence. To accept everything as it is, one must learn to live with the truth of impermanence. This is perhaps the most profound and liberating insight in all of Buddhist philosophy. Everything changes, nothing stays. What is born will die. What appears will vanish. Every sound fades into silence. Every flower withers after its bloom. Yet the human heart struggles endlessly against this law of existence. We cling to the beautiful and reject the painful. We hold on to moments, to people, to identities, as if they could last forever. And in that clinging, we suffer. The fourth secret of acceptance is to make peace with impermanence, not as an abstract idea, but as a direct realization that shapes the way you breathe, love, and live. Impermanence is not a curse. It is the nature of life itself, the very rhythm that allows the universe to move and renew. Without impermanence, there would be no growth, no transformation, no birth of the new. The child becomes an adult, the seed becomes a tree, the night becomes day. Everything is in motion, a great cosmic dance of arising and passing away. To resist this truth is to resist life itself. To embrace it is to awaken. When the Buddha attained enlightenment, one of his first insights was the recognition that all conditioned things are impermanent. He saw that suffering arises when we try to cling to what cannot be held. The Buddha compared human attachment to a person grasping a handful of sand. The tighter they squeeze, the faster it slips through their fingers. Life is like that sand. When we try to possess it, we lose it. When we open our hand, we can feel its texture, its warmth, its reality. Impermanence teaches us to open our hand to life. Most people fear change because they associate it with loss. But change is not only loss, it is also renewal. Every ending is the beginning of something new. Every decay is the soil for new growth. The leaves that fall feed the roots that will sprout again in spring. When we look deeply into impermanence, we see that it is not destruction. It is transformation. Nothing truly dies. It only changes form. The body returns to the earth, the breath returns to the air, and consciousness continues in ways beyond our comprehension. Impermanence is not the enemy of existence. It is its very essence. When we accept impermanence, we begin to live differently. We stop taking moments for granted. We look at the people we love and realize they are not ours to keep. This awareness does not make love weaker, it makes it deeper. When you understand that every meeting is temporary, you cherish it more fully. You listen with presence, you hold with tenderness, you forgive more easily, and you speak your heart while there is still time. The knowledge that everything changes awakens compassion, because you see how fragile and precious each life truly is. Impermanence teaches us to love without clinging and to let go without hatred. In daily life, impermanence surrounds us in subtle ways. The weather shifts, our moods change, the world evolves every moment. Yet the mind constantly tries to freeze time. We cling to what feels good and resist what feels bad. We say, "I want this to last forever," or "I never want to feel this again." But these desires are illusions. The pleasant will fade, the unpleasant will pass. When you realize that both are temporary, you stop chasing and fleeing. You find balance. You become a witness to the flow rather than a captive of it. Impermanence also dissolves pride and envy. When you understand that success, beauty, fame, and wealth are fleeting, you no longer build your identity upon them. You enjoy them when they come, but you do not mistake them for your essence. Likewise, you no longer envy others, because you know that everything they have will change, just as everything you have will. This realization does not make life bleak, it makes it honest. You stop comparing and start appreciating. You live with humility because you know that the same impermanence that takes away also gives. The same cycle that ends one chapter begins another. The fear of death is perhaps the deepest form of resistance to impermanence. We cling to life as if it could be preserved, as if we could escape the natural order. Yet Buddhism teaches that death is not the opposite of life. It is part of it. Just as waves rise and fall in the ocean, beings arise and pass in the sea of existence. To fear death is to fear the ocean for doing what it must. When you look deeply, you see that what dies is only form. The body, the personality, the story. The awareness behind them is unbroken. Like the space inside a cup that remains even when the cup shatters, consciousness continues. When you truly see this, the fear of death fades, and in its place arises a profound gratitude for life. One of the greatest gifts of impermanence is that it makes freedom possible. If things were permanent, we would be trapped forever in our current conditions, bound to our mistakes, our pain, our ignorance. But because everything changes, we can grow. We can awaken. The person you were yesterday is not the person you are today. Every breath, every insight, every act of compassion reshapes who you are. Even suffering transforms when you see it through the lens of impermanence. It too will pass. The storm cannot last forever. And when it ends, the air is clearer, the sky wider, your heart softer. Meditation offers a direct experience of impermanence. As you sit in silence, you notice sensations appearing and disappearing, a sound, a thought, a feeling. None of them last. You begin to see that the entire field of your experience is in constant motion. Even the sense of I changes from moment to moment. This insight can be disorienting at first, but then it becomes liberating. You realize that you do not need to cling to any state of mind or emotion because it will change on its own. You learn to rest in awareness itself, the space in which all things come and go. This awareness is not impermanent. It is the timeless witness of change. To discover this is to find peace that nothing can disturb. In the modern world, impermanence is often hidden beneath distractions. We surround ourselves with possessions, achievements, and technology that create an illusion of permanence. We store endless photos to capture fleeting moments, as if memory could substitute for presence. But no image can freeze life. The only way to truly honor a moment is to live it fully while it's here. When you are completely present, there is no need to hold on. Because you are already complete. You no longer live in the fear of losing, because you see that nothing real can be lost. Only the form changes, not the essence. Impermanence also brings wisdom in times of suffering. When pain arises, it can feel eternal. The mind says, this will never end. But impermanence whispers, this too shall pass. And it always does. Every emotion, no matter how intense, eventually fades. When you understand this, you no longer panic in the midst of pain. You can endure it with patience, knowing it is temporary. This patience is not resignation, it is strength. It allows you to remain calm even as waves crash around you, because you know that calm will return. You trust the rhythm of life, and that trust becomes your peace. To truly embrace impermanence, you must also learn to let go, not with bitterness, but with grace. Letting go is not about forgetting, it is about allowing things to complete their course. When a relationship ends, when a season changes, when a chapter closes, you bow to it with gratitude. You thank it for what it brought and release it to the flow of life. In doing so, you make space for the new to enter. The heart that clings becomes heavy. The heart that lets go becomes light. This is not a loss, it is renewal. Impermanence also reveals the interdependence of all things. Because everything changes, everything is connected. The rain that falls today becomes the river that nourishes tomorrow's fields. The decay of one form gives birth to another. Your breath, exhaled now, will feed the air another being inhales. When you see this, you realize that nothing truly disappears. It only transforms. The universe is a vast web of arising and passing, an endless exchange of energy. To resist impermanence is to resist this interconnected harmony. To accept it is to feel one with all existence. Even joy is deepened by impermanence. Because you know it will not last, you savor it more. You stop chasing happiness as a permanent state and instead find beauty in the transient moments of joy that life offers: a sunrise, a laugh, a kind word, a quiet evening. You stop demanding eternity from fleeting things, and in that humility you find contentment. Impermanence teaches you to see the sacred in the ordinary, to treasure the fragile, to appreciate what is here now instead of mourning what has passed or fearing what will come. When you accept impermanence, gratitude becomes natural. You stop expecting life to be otherwise. You see that every breath is a miracle because it is temporary. You stop postponing happiness, thinking it will come later when conditions are perfect. You realize that perfection was never the goal, presence was. Gratitude transforms impermanence from a source of sorrow into a source of awe. You bow to the mystery of existence, understanding that its beauty lies precisely in its transience. To live in harmony with impermanence is also to release the illusion of control over time. We plan, schedule, and anticipate, believing that we can dictate the rhythm of life. But time moves as it will. It does not belong to us. The more we try to hold it, the more it slips away. When you accept that you cannot stop time, you begin to live more fully in it. You stop postponing what matters: kindness, forgiveness, love, truth. You act now because now is all there is. Impermanence awakens urgency, not in the sense of haste, but in the sense of presence. You realize that this very moment is the only one that truly exists, and you live it with your whole heart. When you live with awareness of impermanence, even suffering becomes sacred. You see that the pain you feel today is shaping the compassion you will offer tomorrow. The wound you resist may become the wisdom that heals others. The tears you shed are watering the seeds of awakening. Nothing is wasted. Impermanence is not chaos. It is divine order, constantly transforming what is into what will be. When you stop resisting, you begin to see the hidden grace behind every change. There is a quiet story told among Buddhist teachers about a monk who carried a single bowl. Each morning he would receive food from villagers, and each evening he would wash his bowl and set it down with care. One day the bowl slipped from his hands and broke. For a moment he felt sadness. Then he smiled and said softly, "Ah, so it ends." He swept the pieces aside and continued his evening meditation. This is the spirit of acceptance, to meet impermanence not with despair, but with understanding. To see the breaking not as a loss, but as part of the endless unfolding of existence. When you live this way, even fear begins to dissolve. You no longer fear loss because you no longer demand permanence. You no longer fear aging because you see beauty in every phase of life. You no longer fear uncertainty because you trust the rhythm of change. This is true peace, not the fragile peace of stability, but the unshakable peace that arises when you are no longer threatened by change itself. You become like a tree whose roots are deep in the earth. The seasons may change, but you remain grounded in the awareness that watches them come and go. Impermanence also opens the heart to compassion for others. You see that everyone you meet is walking the same path of change and loss. The angry person, the anxious one, the proud, the fearful, all are struggling with impermanence, all are clinging to what cannot be held. This understanding softens judgment and awakens empathy. Instead of reacting with irritation, you respond with kindness. You see yourself in them. And when compassion arises, acceptance becomes complete, for you no longer divide the world into enemies and allies, into right and wrong. You see that everyone is simply learning to live with change. The more deeply you embrace impermanence, the freer you become. You stop fearing the end of things, and therefore you begin to live more courageously. You take chances, you love deeply, you speak truth, because you know that time is precious. You no longer wait for life to begin. You understand that it is happening right now. You move with the rhythm of existence instead of against it. You realize that peace does not come from stability, but from fluidity, from being like water, adapting, flowing, and finding your way through every obstacle. This is the essence of the fourth secret of acceptance, to find peace in impermanence. To look at the ever-changing world not as something to be feared, but as the dance of awakening itself. To see that every ending holds a hidden blessing, every change a chance to awaken. To live with the awareness that nothing belongs to you, and therefore everything can be loved freely. Impermanence is not loss, it is love moving through time. When you can stand at the edge of life and death, joy and sorrow, gain and loss, and bow to all of it with equal grace, then you have understood the heart of the Buddha's teaching. You are no longer bound by fear, because you see that what you truly are cannot end. The body may age, the seasons may change, but awareness, the silent witness behind all, remains untouched. This awareness is the true refuge, the timeless peace that cannot be broken by the flow of time. And so you breathe deeply, bow to the passing moment, and let it go, knowing that in its vanishing lies the birth of something new. You no longer cling, you no longer run. You are simply here, fully, freely, peacefully, and one with the impermanent world, yet rooted in the eternal. If these words have touched your spirit, take a moment to subscribe to the channel and continue walking this path toward awakening, peace, and freedom. The stillness beyond acceptance. There is a point on the path where words like acceptance, surrender, and letting go no longer seem to capture the depth of what unfolds within. At this point, you do not merely accept life, you merge with it. You no longer stand apart from existence, choosing or rejecting, approving or disapproving. You simply are. You are as the sky is to the clouds, vast and unmoved, whether the day is bright or stormy. This is the stillness beyond acceptance, the fifth secret on the Buddhist path to freedom. It is not something you attain through effort. It is what remains when all resistance, all clinging, and all striving fall away. It is the original state of awareness, the natural serenity that has always been there beneath the noise of thought and emotion. To arrive at this stillness, you must first understand that acceptance, though profound, is still a movement of the mind. It implies an object to be accepted, a subject doing the accepting, and an act between them. But the ultimate realization of the Buddhist path transcends even this duality. When the mind becomes utterly still, when it no longer labels experiences as pleasant or unpleasant, good or bad, self or other, the separation between observer and observed dissolves. What remains is pure being, awareness itself. This awareness does not need to accept or reject, because it already includes everything. It is the silent witness of all that arises and passes, untouched by the play of change. The journey toward this realization is gradual, but its truth is immediate. Even now, as you read these words, there is an awareness behind your thoughts. The quiet knowing that perceives them, that awareness is not in conflict with what it sees. Thoughts may come and go, awareness remains. Emotions may surge and fade, awareness remains. Pain may arise in the body, but the awareness of that pain is still, spacious, unbroken. To rest in that awareness is to taste the stillness beyond acceptance. The Buddha often used the metaphor of a lake to describe the mind. When the wind of desire and aversion blows, the surface of the lake ripples and its reflection of reality becomes distorted. But when the wind subsides, the water becomes clear and still, perfectly reflecting the moon. In the same way, when the mind ceases to struggle, when it no longer insists that life be different, it reflects the truth of things as they are. Stillness does not mean the absence of movement in life. It means the absence of turmoil within. The world continues to change, but your heart no longer trembles with it. You move with grace through both joy and sorrow because you no longer identify with the passing waves. You have become the depth beneath them. In this stillness, you begin to see that peace is not something to be found. It is something to be uncovered. It has always been here, hidden beneath layers of thought, emotion, and resistance. The purpose of spiritual practice is not to create peace, but to remove the noise that obscures it. When you stop searching, striving, and fixing, peace reveals itself, silent, effortless, complete. You realize that what you sought was never lost. The treasure was buried not in the world, but within your own awareness. To live from this stillness is to live without opposition. You no longer need life to fit your expectations because you see that it cannot be otherwise. Things are as they are because they are the sum of infinite causes and conditions. You see this clearly, and therefore you no longer argue with reality. Even when pain comes, you allow it. You feel it fully without running, without clinging, and you see that it too passes. Even when joy comes, you embrace it without fear of its end, knowing it is part of the same dance. You begin to experience a quiet joy that does not depend on circumstance, the joy of simply being. This stillness is not indifference. It is not numbness or detachment from life. On the contrary, it is the most intimate connection with existence possible. When the mind is silent, you feel everything more deeply, the warmth of the sun, the sound of rain, the heartbeat of the earth beneath your feet. You feel the suffering of others as your own and their happiness as your own. This stillness gives birth to compassion, not because you think you should care, but because the illusion of separation has dissolved. You no longer see yourself as apart from the world. You see yourself as the world. Compassion flows naturally from that realization, as fragrance from a flower. In the stillness beyond acceptance, the concept of control disappears completely. You no longer ask, "What should I do?" You act spontaneously, guided not by thought but by presence. Your actions arise from the same intelligence that makes the flowers bloom and the stars move. This is what the Buddha called right action, not moral rigidity, but alignment with the natural order of things. When you act from stillness, your deeds carry the fragrance of peace. They are not born of fear or desire. They are expressions of harmony. You become a channel through which life flows effortlessly. The world may look the same, but your relationship with it changes completely. You no longer seek permanence in impermanent things. You no longer chase after happiness or run from pain. You rest in the middle, where balance lives. The mind stops oscillating between "I want" and "I don't want." And in that stillness, you discover a freedom that cannot be taken from you. This freedom does not depend on wealth, status, or circumstance. It is the freedom of the heart that has ceased to demand that life be other than it is. This state of being cannot be forced. You cannot will yourself into stillness, because effort itself is movement. Stillness arises naturally when you stop feeding the patterns that disturb it. When you no longer identify with thoughts, they lose their power. When you no longer resist emotions, they pass through you like clouds. When you no longer grasp for control, life carries you gently. It is a paradox. You arrive at stillness not by doing, but by ceasing to interfere. The more you relax into awareness, the more peace reveals itself. The teachings of impermanence and non-resistance prepare the ground for this realization. Once you see that everything is transient, you stop clinging. Once you stop clinging, resistance fades. And when resistance fades, stillness appears on its own. You begin to live not from reaction, but from awareness. In this state, even challenges become transparent. You may still experience moments of sadness or anger, but they are like ripples on the surface of an infinite sea. They come, they go, and the depths remain undisturbed. This is not suppression, it is understanding. You know that everything, including your emotions, belongs to the natural flow of existence. You let them rise and fall without identification. As this stillness deepens, the idea of a separate self begins to dissolve. You realize that the I, who thought it needed to control, resist, or accept, was never truly real. It was a collection of thoughts, memories, and emotions that you mistook for your identity. When the mind becomes silent, this illusion drops away, and what remains is pure consciousness, vast, timeless, free. You see that you were never a fragment struggling against the universe. You were always the universe itself, dreaming of being small. This awakening is not dramatic. It is simple, quiet, and profoundly peaceful. You wake up from the dream of separation and rest in the truth of unity. To live in this realization is to see sacredness in all things. You look at the ordinary world, the people walking on the street, the sound of laughter, the play of light on a wall, and you see divinity shining through it all. You no longer divide life into sacred and mundane, spiritual and ordinary. Every moment is the Buddha's teaching, every breath a prayer. Even pain becomes a teacher because it points you back to what does not change. The entire universe becomes a reflection of the stillness within you. In Zen, they say, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. The outer life may not change, but the inner experience changes completely. You still go to work, speak with others, and fulfill responsibilities, but now you do these things from presence. Each action becomes meditation, each word an expression of awareness. You no longer divide your life into spiritual and worldly because you see that the spiritual is the essence of the worldly. This understanding brings simplicity and wholeness. You are no longer seeking something beyond life. You are living life as the expression of the sacred. The stillness beyond acceptance is not about escaping the world, but embracing it so fully that there is no longer a division between you and it. You see that suffering and joy, birth and death, loss and renewal are all part of the same flow. When you stop separating the opposites, duality dissolves into oneness. This oneness is not something you can understand with the mind. It must be lived. It is the silence between two notes of music, invisible yet essential to the melody. When you live from this silence, every experience becomes harmonious because you no longer add resistance to it. You flow as life itself. The path to this realization often moves through silence, not just external silence, but the silence of the heart. Spend time each day sitting quietly, doing nothing, allowing everything to be as it is. Watch your breath. Feel your body. Notice thoughts without following them. In time, you will begin to sense the space between thoughts, the vast stillness that has been there all along. That space is not empty. It is alive, full of awareness. The more you rest in it, the more you recognize it as your true nature. You begin to carry that silence with you into every moment, in conversation, in movement, in rest. Even in the midst of noise, you remain anchored in silence. When challenges arise, as they inevitably do, this stillness becomes your refuge. You no longer collapse under pressure because you no longer identify with the turbulence. You are the calm in the storm. You meet difficulties with clarity instead of panic, with compassion instead of blame. Others may see your serenity and mistake it for detachment, but it is not detachment, it is freedom. You are no longer pushed and pulled by the extremes of life. You remain centered, grounded in awareness, moving through the world with quiet strength. This stillness also transforms the way you relate to others. You no longer demand that people act according to your expectations. You no longer project your unhealed pain onto them. You listen more deeply, speak more gently, and love more freely. You realize that everyone you meet is a reflection of the same awareness that you are. This understanding creates harmony. Conflicts dissolve because you no longer defend an ego that needs to be right. You no longer take things personally because you know that nothing is truly personal. Everything is part of the universal unfolding. You forgive easily because you see that holding on to anger disturbs your own peace. Compassion becomes effortless because it is no longer a choice. It is your nature. The stillness beyond acceptance also reveals the futility of seeking. For so long, the human mind seeks for happiness, for love, for enlightenment, for meaning. But seeking implies that what you desire is elsewhere in the future. When the mind becomes still, you realize that what you were looking for has always been here. The very awareness that is reading these words is what you have been seeking. It is already free, already complete. Nothing needs to be added, and nothing can be taken away. When this truth sinks in, all seeking stops, and what remains is peace beyond description. You no longer chase the horizon, because you realize you are the sky itself. To live in this realization is to live with trust. Trust in life, trust in yourself, trust in the unseen intelligence that moves all things. You no longer question why things happen as they do because you sense the perfection in the flow. Even in uncertainty, you feel guided. Even in darkness, you feel the quiet presence of light. This trust is not based on belief. It is born of direct experience. You have seen the pattern of impermanence, the futility of resistance, the peace of surrender, and now you know life can be trusted. It is not against you, it is within you, as you. In this trust, gratitude arises naturally. You are grateful not only for pleasant moments, but for every experience that reveals truth. Gratitude becomes your prayer, your way of seeing. You thank the sunrise and the rain, the joy and the sorrow, the beginning and the end. You no longer categorize experiences as blessings or curses, for you see that all of them serve awakening. You are grateful simply to exist, to breathe, to witness, to be. And this gratitude deepens your stillness, for it aligns you completely with the present moment. Eventually, words like path or practice also dissolve. You realize that you were never separate from the destination. The path was the illusion of the seeker. Awareness was always here, silent and unchanging, while experiences came and went. The Buddha's awakening was not a becoming, it was a remembering. He remembered what was always true, that peace is the nature of being. When you remember this, life becomes simple again. You no longer look for meaning in concepts or philosophies. You find meaning in being itself, in the simple, luminous fact that you are here, aware, alive. This is the final secret of acceptance, that beyond all effort, all learning, all striving, there is only stillness, the pure awareness that holds everything without resistance. It cannot be taught, only realized. It cannot be owned, only lived. When you rest in it, the distinction between acceptance and life disappears. Acceptance becomes life itself. You no longer practice peace, you are peace. You no longer search for love, you are love. You no longer look for freedom, you are free. And so you walk gently through the world, not as someone who has mastered life, but as life itself, expressing mastery. You speak softly, act wisely, love deeply, and rest often. You find beauty in simplicity, strength in silence, and truth in the ordinary. You are no longer driven by the noise of desire or fear. You move like the wind, invisible yet felt, quiet yet powerful, free yet grounded. You know that everything is transient, yet you also know that what you truly are is eternal. You live as both the wave and the ocean, the sound and the silence, the seeker and the found. In this way, the journey of acceptance ends where it began, in the present moment. The circle completes itself. There was never anywhere to go, nothing to attain, no battle to win. There was only this breath, this awareness, this stillness that has been here all along, patiently waiting beneath the noise of thought. When you recognize it, your search ends and your real life begins. You live not as a person trying to control existence, but as existence itself, vast, peaceful, radiant. And when you rest in that realization, even words like enlightenment lose meaning. There is only the simple joy of being, breathing, walking, seeing, loving. Each moment becomes complete, whole, sacred. You understand why the Buddha smiled in silence. He smiled because he saw that nothing was missing and nothing was ever wrong. The entire universe was unfolding exactly as it must, and he was one with it. You too can live from that smile, that knowing, that peace beyond understanding. If this truth resonates within you, take a moment to subscribe to the channel and continue walking this path of awareness, silence, and liberation. The path where acceptance becomes freedom, and freedom becomes your natural state.